Hey, good Monday, everybody. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful start to the week out there. And we do have a couple of areas of concern to discuss today. Obviously, probably the big storyline is going to be potential tropical cyclone 8 or potential tropical storm Helene is another word or phrasing to use there, which is going to bring some pretty big time impacts today to portions of the Carolinas. I think this is a storm that's probably going to catch a lot of people off guard. It's one that I think many folks haven't really been paying attention to, mainly just because it didn't have a name and it didn't form way out into the Atlantic, and it's not something that we've been tracking for a week plus like we do with a lot of storms. This is one that's very homegrown. It's developed right off the Carolina coastline. And is going to work inland this afternoon with tropical impacts, even if it doesn't have that name. So obviously we're going to break all that down for you in today's video. Now, outside of that, a couple other areas to watch. I am watching some stormy weather out west and into the Great Plains that could cause some problems here over the next week as we get rounds of these storms. And besides that, we have another area in the tropics that I'm watching. And this one, I think, could definitely bring impacts to the United States in one way, shape, or form in the next 10 days or so, or at least kind of in that 7 to 14 day range, maybe a little bit after 10 days, we'll see. But again, there's a pretty big signal for that growing as well, which we will talk about in today's video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. We're trying to get to 10,000 by the end of hurricane season, so we've got about a month and a half to gain ballpark, 700 or 800 new subscribers. I think that's very doable. So again, if you watch the videos regularly, just go ahead and subscribe. It makes your life easier. My videos will show up in your feed more often. You can also hit the bell after subscribing on that subscribe button to get the latest notifications every time I post. Also, like the video and comment. Let me know what you're seeing out in your neck of the woods this morning. Here in Charlotte, it's getting a little breezy, it's getting cloudy, and some rain working on through. Again, all from this potential tropical system. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump on into things here. Now, taking a look at satellite imagery, the big story again is this little area here. And again, I know I'm sorry with a little flash. It's part of science here. You miss a picture whenever the satellite's going around the Earth, and then it just kind of has a little bit of an oopsie on the loop. But either way, what we're looking at here is, again, potential tropical cyclone 8 there in that area off the southeast coastline. That is going to definitely be something that we are going to talk about today. Outside of that, a big storm system back towards California getting its act together, bringing lots of shower and storm activity, and even some showers and storms back up into the Great Plains. So definitely a couple of areas that we're watching here as we go throughout the day today. Now, current radar imagery, we definitely are seeing some areas of some more troublesome weather. Again, obviously back down towards the Carolinas, seeing some pretty heavy rainfall, specifically towards the Wilmington and kind of Jacksonville corridor of North Carolina this morning. Unfortunately, some of the same areas that got hit hard by Debbie in that rainfall, it's kind of the same axis of rain here, is going to work on through. So, heavy rain there this morning for that commute back out into the plains. Again, some clusters of some storms I talked about. I mentioned this for the past couple of days. I said a stormy pattern would probably set up shop again back out this way. And sure enough, that appears to be what's happening. Also still dealing with some scattered showers here through the southeast from Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even back up towards the Ozarks and the Memphis area, seeing some showers and storms rolling on through for you Monday. Also, I don't know why I said you Monday like that, but also seeing some showers through the Four Corners region, and then even some high elevation snow showers up through portions of the Sierra Nevadas into the higher terrains of Nevada itself, and then back up towards Yellowstone National Park. So again, we're seeing all forms of precipitation out there this morning, outside of maybe some ice, which we might be missing. All right, zooming things on in here. Again, potential tropical cyclone 8, potential tropical cyclone Helene, whatever you want to call it. The impacts are going to remain the same, so don't get focused on the name. Just focus on kind of what I tell you is going to happen here. And not the prettiest looking storm. In fact, you're probably wondering, well, is the center of the circulation right here? You would be led to believe that, but if we look at the National Hurricane Center and kind of their placement of it, they actually have it further down here, but again, it's one of those sloppy storms that doesn't really have a well-defined center of circulation. It's kind of just this, front here that these storms and showers are moving along, and it's got, areas of warm fronts here on this side. It's got more cold front kind of on this side, and that's why it's not getting the name Helene right now. And at this point, it just might not get there at all. But again, impacts remain the same. And speaking of impacts, these are some big-time storms offshore. I mean, you see all these little white dots here, and these are lightning strikes. And anytime you see lightning strikes with anything remotely tropical as it moves ashore, that's definitely a sign of some intense thunderstorm activity with very heavy rainfall rates, some gusty winds, and also going to increase the surge values a little bit here too, with a little bit of coastal flooding here into some of these communities, specifically I think here in southeastern North Carolina. But we saw some last night in South Carolina too. The Cherry Grove area of South Carolina, there into Horry County, saw some pretty good king tide flooding on top of some help from this system. So definitely a storm that's already brought some impacts and will continue to do so over the next little bit. Now, let's go ahead and zoom on into the latest track and kind of all those fun things. I'm going to refresh the map too, just because we should have new information, I think, from the National Hurricane Center. So we will go ahead and pull that up here. Let me put the tropical cyclone track back on. Sorry about that. All right, so again, here we go. Still not quite Helene yet, but winds are sitting at about 50 to 55 miles an hour, gusting even higher than that. So it's definitely a feisty storm here. Pressure down around 1,005 millibars. And an important thing to note here, you see this big yellow or I guess orange area around the storm. That's the wind field. So we do have, tropical storm force winds expanding well out from the center of circulation here. So I don't want you to get focused on whether this is currently tropical storm Helene. In fact, many coastal communities had schools closed today for those winds. I know Horry County was on an e-learning day. I think even Charleston in that area of South Carolina is on an e-learning day. And this is why, again, this big shield of gusty winds and heavy rain moving in. And because of that, or let me just go ahead and talk about the rest of the track real quick beforehand. Again, eventually this is going to work inland. Personally, I know the cone kind of shows this. I think probably the cone's going to end up being a little bit more like this, and the heaviest of the rain is going to be where we have these flash flood watches. So again, the track's still a little bit up in the air here. I think maybe they're a little bit far towards the west on this one, but again, they are the experts after all. But taking a look at the watches, warnings, advisories, the red colors, tropical storm warnings, the green colors, flood watches or flash flood watches. Yeah, flood watches they're going with on this one. And then even through the Columbia area, you see those beige colors. Those are wind advisories. So again, it's going to be a feisty storm, and these are the same watches and warnings we would get with a normal tropical storm, but again, it just doesn't have a name. So, but just put this in perspective a little bit for you. You don't need a named storm to cause problems. You folks down in Georgetown, South Carolina, I can tell you firsthand because I was there storm chasing. Last December, we had a kind of similar hybrid-ish storm like this work up the coast. And again, never had a name. But brought big time flooding impacts, brought some gusty winds. And this is going to be a similar scenario with, kind of how that one played out, I think, for a lot of folks. So again, plenty of watches and warnings here into the Carolinas as we're watching what is semi-Helene, whatever you want to call it. All right, elsewhere in the country, well, not too crazy for the rest of us. We do have, a couple areas of fog this morning out for some of us. Other than that, things remain relatively quiet across the rest of the lower 48. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into the impacts here of PTC 8. All right, so first thing I'm going to mention, we do have a tornado risk today, and this is something that, we often get with this sort of setup, and today is no different. A, green area on the map here is 2% chance of a tornado within a 25-mile radius, but do not let that fool you. You're thinking, well, 2% chance, that means nothing. I can tell you firsthand in this part of the world that it does not take much with these systems to give the chance for some tornadoes. And oftentimes there's tornadoes that you don't really get a warning for. And that's not, a fault of the National Weather Service or your local meteorologist. It's just kind of the way that they form. They're very quick and they're very low-topped showers here and storms. So oftentimes the radar beam height just can't really get that low and cut into the storm to see it. Then they just pick up, or rephrase that, then the tornado forms and just nobody really knows about it until it's a little too late. So if you're anywhere in this green area, just be aware that today from Horry County all the way up the I-95 corridor through kind of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, Elizabeth City as well, and then through all of the Outer Banks does have that chance of an isolated tornado this morning, afternoon, and evening. So it's an all-day event here. So just make sure you're aware of that. All right, let's time this out a little bit for you here. This is probably about what it's going to look like late morning as this storm slowly moves inland. And again, I'll be honest, I think the models are a little bit far south on the storm. We'll see. It might shift back south and maybe the models are a little bit closer to right, but I think you're seeing a lot of this heavy rain axis over northeast South Carolina and southeast North Carolina. I would shift this north about 50 miles or so. I really think the worst of it's going to be in North Carolina rain-wise. Now, gusty winds and all, obviously anywhere in that tropical storm warning, we're still going to see some gusty winds. But as we go through this afternoon, again, the center of circulation, if we want to call it that, moves inland with that heavy rain bands as well. And again, this is when the tornado threat's going to increase in that area we talked about. This is when the heavy rainfall is going to increase and the gusty wind threat. Now, at this point, rain's moving inland as well. Raleigh, Greensboro, Charlotte going to get in on some rain this afternoon. It's going to be a rainy one for sure. And by the time we're in this evening, unfortunately, this is right near rush hour. It's not a very fun looking commute from Raleigh, again, up the 85 corridor through Greensboro, back down towards Columbia. Potentially could see some rain out of this. And even up into the Raleigh area. Also at this point, is whenever I would be most worried about that tornado threat here. Again, in that circled area on your map, specifically eastern North Carolina is where I would really be watching for that threat. And then we go through this evening, that heavy rain continues to work inland. That tornado threat works inland. Eventually, overnight, those showers kind of spread over even western portions of the Carolinas and into Virginia. Overnight tonight, do not completely rule out a nocturnal tornado threat. You'll notice, again, this banding still showing up. You remember with Debbie, we had multiple nocturnal tornadoes in this part of North Carolina that did some big-time damage. So not saying that this setup is the same, not saying it's going to be as bad as Debbie, just saying it's the threat is there nonetheless in the overnight hours, even if not quite as high as maybe the afternoon and evening hours. Then we get this into Tuesday morning for your commute. Things become much less widespread. It's a much more scattered rain event. But that scattered rain does continue through the Carolinas, especially up into Virginia here at this point, and into West Virginia for our Tuesday afternoon. And again, the center of circulation here could park itself over the western Carolinas a little bit and just continue some kind of dreary conditions throughout the day Tuesday. And then we get this into Wednesday, and I think things will start to clear out a little bit by then for most of us. Now, let's take a look at some wind, and don't worry, I'm going to zoom this out and take a look at the rest of the East Coast with this system in just a second. But wind impacts, these are max wind gusts during this afternoon. And again, these are as strong as the winds will get. These are not sustained winds. These are wind gusts, and again, as strong as the wind gusts will be throughout the entire day. But you'll notice, again, still getting some wind gusts here up into that 40 to 50 mile an hour range here from Columbus County, North Carolina, back down through Brunswick, through the Wilmington area, even potentially into the Myrtle Beach area. And again, even north of there, I think, too, up towards Jacksonville, North Carolina. Fayetteville could get some gusty winds out of this. And then we get into this evening, those gustier winds try to work inland, but I think will begin to die down during the evening hours and the overnight hours. Again, you're seeing some gusts here still up near 40, 45 near Charlotte. I think that's overdone, probably about 10 miles an hour, probably going to be closer to 30 mile an hour wind gusts, maybe getting up to 35, 40. If conditions are just right there. But by the time we're into tomorrow, wind threat won't be a big deal. Again, not a super big wind threat with this one, but I do think at the coast specifically, we could have plenty of gusty winds. But the rainfall is going to be the bigger deal. And speaking of that rainfall, let's zoom things out a little bit here. This is Tuesday morning, again, latest GFS model. You're seeing that rain overtake the mid-Atlantic and continues to work through that region by Tuesday afternoon. Some scattered showers work on through, and even into Wednesday afternoon, this kind of general area of precipitation gets pulled northward a little bit with some overall troughing here. And again, could bring some scattered showers here for our Wednesday afternoon through the mid-Atlantic, portions of the Northeast, and then could eventually even work up into New England here and up into Nova Scotia by Thursday afternoon, and then that pulls on out of here by the weekend. So again, a storm that is going to definitely bring some impacts across a pretty widespread area, but I think the Carolinas are really going to be the ones that feel it the worst. In fact, that flooding threat here, a moderate risk of flash flooding here, again, through the southeastern portion of North Carolina from Wilmington back towards kind of the Cherry Grove area of South Carolina up through really the Horry County border with North Carolina and kind of surrounding communities there through Columbus County and those other parts of North Carolina. I could keep naming towns and communities, but I don't need to do that. So again, that's the big deal today. But also, even outside of there, that slight risk of excessive rainfall spreads through just about the entire state of North Carolina outside of the mountains. And then even up into northern South Carolina from Florence up through Rock Hill and even into the Spartanburg and Gaffney area could see some of that excessive rainfall. So watching that. Total rainfall totals here. Sorry, I'm just repeating words at this point. From the Weather Prediction Center, are going to see a good bit today. A couple of us, I think, are going to pick up on more than half a foot of rainfall in that moderate flash flooding risk area. But even outside of there, again, Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, 1 to 3, 3 to 5 inches in some of those higher places is going to be enough to definitely put a damper on the day and have a couple areas where flooding is a concern. Even up into Virginia, you'll notice we do have some heavier rainfall, and also notice here, even in the mountains, don't let your guard down in these higher terrains where we're going to have some upslope flow on those eastern facing and southern facing slopes. Could definitely see, especially eastern facing slopes, I should say, are really going to see some of those higher rainfall totals as well. So you could see flooding in the mountains as well. I know I said back here on this map outside of the mountains, but I probably should have worded that a little bit differently. So again, there's your rainfall forecast. And again, even some of that rain getting up through the I-95 corridor up into the northeast by the time we get through this weekend. All right, what else do we need to talk about here? Well, unfortunately, a lot. 500 millibar height anomaly map, or our troughing and ridging map, whatever you want to call it again. The important thing here is it shows us where we see cooler air, where we see warmer air, and thus likely where we're going to see storm systems form. So for the middle of this week, the big story is going to be what happens out west. Notice all this blue just working out west, piece at a time here. These are multiple troughs of deep cold air, and that is going to eventually form some low pressure. And especially the one that is going to be the bigger story is into this weekend. Notice this is Saturday, Sunday, and kind of Friday time frame. We've got low pressure forming here, kind of a Colorado low of sorts. Again, this low pressure ejecting from the Rockies into the Great Plains. Going to bring some scattered showers and storms with that one for sure, and will thus bring some unsettled weather for many of us. And again, that could cross the country here. And then look at this in the long range, another big area blew out west. So it's a pretty common theme: ridging in the east, troughing in the west. Just meaning warmer temperatures in the east, cooler temperatures in the west, and a more stormy pattern into the west and the Great Plains because of that. And speaking of that, even today, we're going to start that severe weather threat. We've got a slight risk of severe weather up through portions of North Dakota and Minnesota there through the northern section of that state, but also a marginal risk back towards Utah and into the Four Corners region, where we are going to see some storms this afternoon and evening. And then we'll do it all again tomorrow. Another threat area, in fact, a couple slight risks tomorrow, but nonetheless, really anybody from Montana down through the western Dakotas, western Nebraska, the Denver area, back towards portions of eastern Colorado and northern New Mexico could see some strong storms tomorrow afternoon as a bit of a front of sorts kind of works on through there. So what could this look like? Well, let's take a look at it here. Future radar, and by the way, I'll mention at the top where it says time, it has a time, that's in Eastern time. So go ahead and subtract 3 or 4 hours depending on where you're watching here in the West, which unfortunately I don't have a way to change the time. It's just kind of the way the website is. But it's something that we can work with given how many other amazing things that we get from this website. So here we go. Again, this afternoon, again, this is about 5 o'clock Eastern, so getting into the afternoon hours out west. Look at this, a lot of showers and a lot of storms forming here in some of those troublesome spots here that we talked about. So you're going to have to watch that for strong and severe weather. Again, tornadoes are also possible in some of these areas, especially up near North Dakota and Minnesota. Going to be more of a strong wind threat through the Four Corners. And then this big low pressure just keeps on spinning. We get some mountain snow out of it. We get some more scattered showers. This is into Tuesday afternoon. You get another burst of showers and storms here, and this is why we have that severe weather threat for Tuesday. Notice this big area of some convection firing up here again could become strong to severe for Tuesday afternoon. And then we just continue that even into the overnight hours and into Wednesday. And again, this is just the first storm system. Another one coming after it here. And you can see that on the GFS. Again, this is Wednesday. There's that first storm system that kind of swings on through a little bit of a lull. And then another storm system here by the weekend. Again, with that kind of Colorado low here, bringing some showers and storm activity once again to the Great Plains. And maybe even a little bit of mountain snow through portions of Colorado. Now, what is this going to look like on more of the national scale? Well, here's Saturday afternoon. Here's our low pressure beginning to form near Colorado. Here's some showers and storms forming out in front of it. At the same time, still have some showers kind of lingering through the mid-Atlantic here as we've just got, this is boundary that will not leave. But again, that low pressure forming here through Nebraska, getting its act together by Sunday and Monday could bring a severe weather threat. Again, we won't really know till we're a little bit closer. This is still almost a week away. But just know that threat does exist there. And again, that could swing on through And then after that, you'll notice an area of low pressure off the southeast coastline. We're going to talk about that later on. That one's a bit more of a complicated forecast, but we will discuss it here in a moment. Yeah, that's the latest there on that. Temperature-wise, like I said, ridging has been a big theme here east of the Rockies, and then we've seen troughing west of the Rockies. Because of that, well above average temperatures likely through the plains, through the Ohio River Valley, the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Northeast. It'll be a little more close to, let me back this up a little actually. It'll be slightly below average to more average in the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic due to that cloud cover. Same story out west, you'll notice it's going to be below average, but everywhere in between above average temperatures. Now, the good news is we're getting towards the middle of September and even later September at this point. So, above average is more tolerable than it would have been a month ago. But again, just kind of this big ridging is really messing havoc or playing havoc on any potential hopes of early fall for many of you folks. Alrighty, let's talk about the tropics. So, very quickly, going to briefly mention this. This is Tropical Depression Gordon. Poor guy got absolutely ripped apart by dry air and some shear out here, really shear more than anything else. The good news either way for anybody is Gordon's not going to cause anybody any problems. Going to stay weak. Could strengthen back into a tropical storm at one point, but if I zoom this out just so you can see where we're looking at in general here. Again, here's Africa to the right of your screen, South America to the bottom of your screen. This is out in no man's land and isn't really going to impact anybody, which is good news. Now, what could impact some people, and is a bit of a different story here and something I'm watching, is an area for potential development here down towards the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico and the Southwest Atlantic, this general area. Some of our models have been picking up on that potential development here, and this could potentially start as early as this coming weekend. So I say as early as, it's still a week away, but just know this is something we're watching. So latest GFS model, notice this area of spin that kind of tries to get going this coming Sunday and Saturday. And eventually the GFS does try to spin this up as something, but the models are kind of in a little bit of a different place right now. Some of the models split this off and kind of bring this piece of energy and form it up near the Bahamas and Florida. Other models kind of would develop this piece of energy and bring it up into the Gulf of Mexico. And we're going to take a look at the differences here, but just know, again, we've got some vorticity down here that's trying to do something. And again, the GFS doesn't do a lot with it, at least in the near term. Now, once we get about 10 days from now, again, this is way out there, so I don't want you to buy too much into it, but gets a little bit more excited. But again, still just elongated area of a lot of pieces of energy kind of fighting for dominance here. So again, nothing set in stone right now, but just know there will be, a conducive area for some stormy activity in that time frame that could try to develop. And some of our models will really develop, and I'll show that to you. But the latest Euro model, again, I'm going to zoom it out just so you can actually see it a little bit better. What it kind of does is, again, not much, but does kind of get a piece of energy that's kind of related, kind of not related to the one I just showed you here off the southeast coastline. So, very different timing, very different placement altogether. I think this is really just a different piece of energy compared to the one I was showing you on the GFS. But again, nonetheless, still shows some sort of tropical development-ish in the next 10 days, and then again, kind of moves that up the East Coast. Now, the models that are a lot more excited about this one, well, I'll show you one, the Euro AI model, and the Euro AI model has done very well with some storm systems. It did great with Francine, if I remember correctly, and kind of had a really good consistency. And it's also been very consistent on a storm forming here in the Caribbean in the next 10 days. And here we go. This is next Monday, a week from today. Notice low pressure forming here near the Caribbean and getting into the Gulf of Mexico in the next 10 days as a tropical system. I won't show you anything after this because it doesn't really matter. It's going to change. But just know, again, this model, like the GFS in that same time frame, same general piece of energy, forms a system. And it's not the only one. I'll show you the Canadian model as well. I forgot the Canadian just looks different on your side. Sorry. But we'll move this ahead. Again, the Canadian also pulls some energy out of the Caribbean here, develops it into a tropical system, and then within 10 days has some sort of tropical storm in the Gulf of Mexico threatening U.S. land. So, it's something that's not set in stone. Again, we got a lot of ways to watch it. I don't want you to worry. I don't want you to panic and go buy anything or start evacuating. That's definitely not necessary at this point, but it's something that we're going to watch and keep you updated on. in the tropics and taking a look at some ensembles, GFS ensembles, definitely a signal here. But again, you'll notice it's kind of sporadic, it's scattered. The models are still struggling on what part of this is going to try to kind of form the center and where that will go. But the European as well does have some members that form something here. Again, kind of in that same region the Canadian did and the Euro AI did. So something to watch for sure, something that we're going to keep our eye on definitely here through the long range. And we'll give you the latest on every day. So with that said, again, I appreciate y'all watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like the video, and comment. Let me know what you're seeing out wherever you are watching from. With that said, have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Stay safe out there. Have a way to get those watches and warnings, and I'll see you all tomorrow.